For Comedy Hype News, it's your boy K-Rob. It's surprisingly common for comics to die of suicide. Something about the neurotic cynicism and disgruntled nature of funny people make the professionals who are paid for it depressed enough to end it all. But death by gun isn't always self-inflicted. In a few rare cases, comedians actually find themselves the victim of homicide in twists of fate that seem otherworldly. After all, comics are supposed to be the people who radiate joy, even if they find themselves in miserable sorrow. They have almost a divine gift to transform discomfort into pleasure. Yet for some of them, this blessing is actually a curse that leads those closest to them into a murderous rampage filled by jealousy. Comedic Crime Files presents the death of Phil Hartman. In the mid-1970s, Phil Hartman got his start by taking evening comedy classes ran by the Groundlings, an improvisational and sketch group based in Los Angeles. While there, Hartman became friends with Paul Reubens, and the two collaborated on sketches together, even creating the character Pee Wee Herman, and later developing the Pee Wee Herman Show together. In 1986, Hartman was cast in the 12th season of Saturday Night Live, his big break as a performer. When he was cast, Hartman told the Los Angeles Times, "I wanted to do SNL because I wanted to get the exposure that would give me the box office readability so I can write movies for myself. As an actor, I felt I couldn't compete. I wasn't as cute as the leading man. I wasn't as brilliant as Robin Williams. The one thing I could do was voices and impersonations and weird characters, and there was really no call for that, except on Saturday Night Live." On SNL, Hartman became known for his various impressions of Frank Sinatra, Ronald Reagan, Ed McHone, Phil Donahue, Bill Clinton, and many more. Hartman spent a total of 8 seasons on SNL. Hartman married a total of 3 times in his life. His first wife, Gretchen Lewis, between 1970 and 1972. After their divorce, he married real estate agent Lisa Strand between 1982 to 1985. 2 years later, in 1987, Hartman married Bryn Omdahl, who was born as Vicky Jo Omdahl, after the two met on a blind date the year before. The marriage lasted nearly 11 years and was filled with fear, jealousy, insecurity, intimidation, along with physical and verbal abuse. The marriage would continue to get more toxic as the years went on, and it didn't end well for either party involved. He decided to leave Saturday Night Live in favor of starring in the NBC sitcom News Radio. Hartman spent a total of 4 seasons on the sitcom before his death. On May 28th, Phil Hartman was the victim of a murder-suicide at the hands of his wife in their Los Angeles home at 3 a.m. after what seemed to be a heated yet routine argument. The couple was known for marital instability by those close to them, while appearing perfectly normal to those outside their inner circle. In a CNN report the day of the murder, an acquaintance of the Hartmans, actor Steve Guttenberg, said they were a very happy couple, and he always had the appearance of being well-balanced. While a close friend of Phil's, Cassandra Peterson, said, "Bryn was a very troubled person with lots of problems. She put a serious damper on our friendship. I thought something bad might happen one day with their relationship, but I would never have dreamt this in a million billion years." People magazine published an article 2 weeks after the event detailing the cracks in the Hartman's marriage. It turns out their relationship was reminiscent of a swimming duck, appearing calm on the surface but frantically chaotic underneath. Bryn was Hartman's 3rd wife and the mother of only 2 of his children. At the time of the murder, they had been married for 10 years, but both of them came to the relationship with so much baggage, it seemed inevitable their marriage would end in a pomp and the circumstances, even if murder-suicide wasn't the case. Phil was notoriously calm for a famous comedian. Unlike his SNL co-stars, he wasn't always on seeking attention from a room. Instead, he was known for his ease and willingness to minimize himself for the betterment of the group. Hartman described himself as having a passive, people-pleasing, middle child mentality. And SNL head boss Lorne Michaels said Hartman was the glue because he kind of held the show together. He gave to everybody and demanded very little. He was very low maintenance. But that mentality, which made him lovable professionally, was the bane of his personal life. Bryn's insecurity often asked more of him than he could offer if his career was going to remain stable. Hartman's friend Steve Small recounted a memory to People's Magazine where Hartman told him, "I go into my cave and Bryn throws grenades to get me out." Their fights followed a routine. She had to get amped up to get his attention, and when she got amped up, he would simply go to sleep. He would withdraw, and in the morning, he'd wake up and everything would be fine. Hartman's second wife, Lisa Strand, said the marriage ended because Phil's body would be there, but he'd be in his own world. That passivity made you crazy, and when I'd protest, he'd say, "You're getting in the way of my career, and this is who I am and what it's going to be like." According to those close to the couple, Bryn was exceptionally insecure and volatile, steaming from one identity crisis after another that would never resolve. Her high school principal said she was just another student, an ordinary young lady, and that bland as chalk perception of her probably sparked Bryn to drop out of high school, marry and divorce a telephone operator before moving to California to model and take acting classes. One of her friends from that period, Suzanne Stander, explained Bryn's unhealthy sense of self. She changed her name a lot. When I met her, she was Vicky. Then she became Vicky Joe. Then Brendan, and then Bryn. I laugh and say, "Who are you this week?" Eventually, Bryn and Hartman were set up on a blind date, and Hartman was engrossed by the facade Bryn had created as a blonde bombshell. But Standard says Bryn was quickly intimidated by Hartman because he was this confident guy on the way up. Bryn's inferiority complex became worse over the course of the marriage. When Hartman got the job at SNL, she felt secluded and frustrated because she wasn't on camera in the show's opening credit, even though she was sitting right next to Hartman in the scene that featured him. By the time Hartman left SNL and the couple moved to LA, Bryn's mental state had deteriorated to the point that she underwent several plastic surgeries to fill an internal void through external means. Bryn's friend at the time acknowledged she didn't have her own identity, and Strander told People magazine, "I understood her need to spruce up her exterior because she didn't think she had an interior." Her behavior was so sporadic that after the birth of their first child in 1988, Bryn wrote a scathing letter to Hartman's ex-wife, Lisa Strand, after she congratulated the couple on the birth of their child. Strand said, "Bryn wrote me back 4 pages of the most hideous vitriol you can imagine. I called Phil and said, 'Do you have any idea who you're married to?' And he said, 'You should have seen the letter she wanted to send.'" Despite neither of them being satisfied with the status of their marriage, Hartman had a plan. He knew Bryn needed all of his undivided attention to make the relationship last, so he devised a long-time strategy to keep them together. Hartman was making $50,000 per episode for his role on news radio. He thought if he could survive 3 more years and get the show into syndication, he could retire from show business and retire to Catalina Island with Bryn full-time. Obviously, that didn't happen. Bryn was a drug addict, alcoholic, having been in rehab several times, most recently slipping after nearly 10 years of sobriety. It seemed as if Hartman was the catalyst and actually got Bryn clean, and when she relapsed, a non-negotiable was crossing his mind. Bryn was in and out of rehab within months of the murder, and even confided in her friend that she sought a divorce for 2 years, but Hartman refused to agree. Others say Hartman was ready to call it quits. According to his friend, Stephen Small, Phil made it very clear that if she started using drugs again, that would end the relationship. By that time, the finale to their lives was already written. Bryn started taking the antidepressant Zoloft a few weeks before the incident, but never quit drinking or doing cocaine, a mixture notorious for manifesting homicidal and suicidal thoughts in patients. And that night, she killed Phil Hartman. She drank with a friend at a restaurant on Catalina Island. Upon her return, the couple had their usual argument over her drug use, and that evening as Phil slept, Bryn shot him 3 times with a .38 caliber handgun, twice in the head and once in the chest. After that, police said she fled to the home of her friend, Ron Douglas, and confessed to the crime. Douglas didn't believe her at first, even though she still had the murder weapon in her purse, and the two returned to Hartman's home. When Douglas found Hartman lifeless in the master bed, he took the murder weapon from Bryn, placed it in a plastic bag, and called 911 to report the crime. When police arrived, rather than apprehending Bryn first, they removed the couple's children from the home. During that time, Bryn locked herself in the master bedroom, retrieved the second weapon from Hartman's gun safe, and shot herself in the head. One is forced to assume her suicide was out of fear of serving a prison sentence. One of Bryn's closest friends, Audrea Diamond, said Bryn wasn't feeling trapped in motherhood, her issues with Hartman notwithstanding. She was a devoted mother who never abandoned her kids. In 1999, a wrongful death lawsuit was filed by Bryn's brother, Gregory Omdahal, against Pfizer, who manufactured Zoloft at the time. As previously mentioned, Bryn was prescribed the drug because she suffered from panic attacks. The case Hartman versus Pfizer alleges that the antidepressant is what drove Bryn to insanity, which caused her to shoot her husband, then herself. Pfizer settled the case outside of court in a private agreement. When Phil Hartman's death was announced the next day, shock waves were felt among his fans, peers, and everyone he encountered. If there's anything Phil Hartman taught us in his short time in the entertainment industry, it's to always carry yourself with professionalism and decorum. Unfortunately for Phil, the respect he earned in his career wasn't reciprocated at home in his personal life. Despite the dysfunction that occurred at home, Hartman didn't let that stop him from becoming everyone's favorite funny man. Stay up to date with the latest news and comedy by subscribing here to our YouTube channel. Follow Comedy Hype across all social media, and look out for new original content on our new streaming service at comedyhype.com. For Comedy Hype News, this has been your boy K-Rob.